based on Crackles with Rob's website. Now, you can do IELTS online tests easier, especially reading and writing. With Reading Test, you can use Highlight tool to highlight important words, phrases, sentences, or unhighlight text by selecting such words, then right-clicking. For the Writing Test, you can use the tool Word Count when writing. With our sample answer, many idioms and collocations for each topic are provided.
We're going to look at thesis statements in this lesson, and this applies to your Task 2 essays if you're an academic or a general training student. Okay, so let's take a look at thesis statements. First of all, what is a thesis statement and why is it necessary? The thesis statement is going to be, it ought to be, the final sentence of your introduction paragraph in your Task 2 essay. It's going to be your one sentence answer to the essay question that they've asked you. Okay, so a thesis statement should really be one sentence that directly answers the question for your Task 2 essay. All right, now the purpose of a thesis statement is to make your essay easier for the reader to understand. And this is accomplished because, first of all, your thesis statement provides your precise definition. It precisely defines your point of view or argument. Okay, so this is what you plan to say in response to the essay question. And then secondly, it tells the reader what your main points are going to be. It gives an overview of the main points in your body paragraphs of your essay, okay? The main ideas of those body paragraphs, okay? So this communicates to the reader the overall structure of your essay. It's what the reader should expect as they make their way through your essay from beginning to end, okay? So this is tough. You have one sentence to communicate your viewpoint and basically define, or very generally define, what your main points are going to be. Okay, so there's no doubt that thesis statements are a difficult thing for many students to master. Let's take a look at how to create a good thesis statement, and we're also going to look at some pretty bad thesis statements, some thesis statements that would actually pull down your score a little bit if you use those. So I'll use those very common kinds of problems that I see in student writing with thesis statements. We'll analyze those in this lesson as well. All right, let's start with a good thesis. Let's see what the goal is first, and then we'll look at some ways that students sometimes miss the goal. All right, a good thesis provides your direct answer to the topic presented in the prompt, and it introduces the main points you will discuss in the essay. Okay, we've already discussed that. So let's look at an example. Here's an example prompt here towards the middle of your screen. Some parents believe that children need strict rules. Other parents believe children should have a lot of freedom to make decisions on their own. Discuss both sides and give your opinion. Okay, so we've got this topic of rules, all right? What's the proper approach to rules? Thinking about parents and what they should do related to rules for their children. Should they give a lot of freedom, or should they have very strict rules at home? So IELTS, your Task 2 essay prompt tells you you're supposed to discuss both sides and give your opinion, right? So somehow we need to indicate that we are going to discuss both sides and give our opinion on this topic in our thesis statement. And that's what the thesis statement down below attempts to do. Let's take a look at that. While children need clear and consistently enforced rules, they should not be restricted so severely that they have very few opportunities to think independently. Okay, now do you see this answers the question, okay? It provides an answer to the topic of rules. Basically, it says, yes, children need some rules, but perhaps not extremely strict rules, because in the second part of the sentence, it says that they should not be restricted so severely that they have very few opportunities to think independently. All right, so we can tell already that in this essay, the writer is going to consider both sides, going to consider the positive aspect of having rules, but I would predict that this writer is going to say, well, yes, rules are important, but not strict rules, that there needs to be freedom as well. And that's going to be a second body paragraph where the writer is going to explain how parents should give appropriate freedom to kids. Okay, do you see how this thesis statement provides the perspective of the author? And if body paragraph 1 is about the positive aspect of rules, okay, body paragraph 2 is about how rules should not be overly strict. And that's how we know the overall structure of the essay, because it's indicated in the thesis statement. Notice also, we're supposed to give an opinion in this essay, and this thesis clearly states an opinion. It gives the perspective on rules that this author provides. Okay, so this is a good thesis statement. This is the kind of thing you ought to try. An okay thesis statement. All right, so many students don't go into so much detail as the thesis that you just saw, okay? And this is sometimes okay, but it's better to be specific, in just like you saw in the thesis statement on the previous screen. But it's okay. It won't pull your score down too much if you do something like this. Okay, we've got the same prompt as before, and look at the thesis statement that we have down below here, okay? While children need rules, parents should not restrict them completely. Okay, now this is okay. This provides the author's perspective. We know that what the author's opinion on the essay question is with this thesis statement, that rules are necessary, but that they can go too far. Sometimes parents can, that these rules should not be overly restrictive, right? We know that and we see that, but it's just not as detailed. And as a reader, I don't have as clear of an idea about what the author's going to write about in the body paragraphs, because those ideas, those specific ideas, are not mentioned here. That's why this thesis statement is just okay, because there's no indication of what to expect in the body paragraphs. Let's compare them specifically here. So up on top, we have our okay thesis. Okay, and at the bottom is the thesis statement that we saw earlier. Notice the details, differences, the underlined parts in the good thesis. Okay, these are going to be the main ideas that the author writes about in those body paragraphs, that rules should be clear and consistently enforced, but that kids should not be restricted so severely that they can't think independently. Okay, that second half of the essay, we know that the author is going to write about how it's important for kids to think independently. Notice that those kinds of ideas about thinking independently, we don't get them at all in the okay thesis, because it doesn't specify those things. That's the difference between this good thesis that you see down below and the okay thesis that you see up above. All right, so presenting your perspective, indicating what your main ideas are going to be in your body paragraph, and basically just following the rules of the prompt. In this case, we're supposed to give an opinion about the topic, and so that's provided in both the okay and the good thesis statement that you see here. Now let's look at some bad thesis statements, some mistakes that I see students often make when they're trying to write thesis statements. Now, these are things to look for in your writing, to check as you're editing your own work to see if you're doing these kinds of things. The first mistake that's common: a bad thesis fails to make an argument or state a perspective. Okay, so I see thesis statements like this. Look, it's the same prompt in the middle here, just putting it up there to remind you about the prompt. What we're thinking about is down here. Here's the bad thesis. In this essay, I will discuss the positive and negative aspects of setting strict rules for children. Okay, now this is close, I guess, almost an okay thesis, because clearly the writer is going to talk about two sides, okay, discussing both sides, all right? But the writer does not give the opinion here. All I know from this bad thesis is that the writer is going to talk about the two sides of this issue. There's no mention of the author's perspective in this thesis, and that's a problem. Okay, in this essay prompt, you're supposed to provide your perspective, And that has to be something you include in the thesis statement. Okay, so read it again if you need to. You can even pause your video, but notice that there's no perspective or no opinion stated by the author in this case. So this is bad thesis number 1. Number 2, a bad thesis focuses on a different topic than the prompt. This is also very common, that somehow in reading the prompt, maybe you're not quite clear what the essay prompt is asking you to do or to write about, or you're thinking and you're brainstorming, you're not quite clear on the direction you want to go as you're responding to the prompt. And so sometimes the thesis is unclear because you haven't had enough time to sort of think through your ideas completely. Okay, that's normal stuff. It's common. It's something to work on. Here's an example. Okay, same topic. We're looking down below at the bad thesis here. Modern parents should follow the parenting style of older generations. Okay, here, first of all, there's technically no discussion of rules or anything like that. I guess parenting style could be a way to discuss rules, but that's not stated very clearly in this thesis. So already we're kind of possibly getting away from the topic of the essay that we're supposed to write about. And the ending here, if there's any question, makes it very clear that we've gone far away from the topic. Okay, older generations. Well, there's no reason why we should be discussing, as in your thesis statement, what older generations have done. Okay, the topic of the essay is supposed to be your opinion on how much freedom or how many rules to give to children, not a discussion of older generations. Now, of course, you could use examples from older generations in your essay, okay, as sort of smaller points or as details that you provide. But there's no reason why the older generations idea should be a main idea, one that you would include in your thesis and that you would write a whole paragraph about or more in your essay itself. So this is just getting away from the topic. Notice also there's no way that we sort of understand that the writer plans to discuss both sides of this issue in this thesis statement. Okay, there's no sense, like we've seen in the other sample thesis statements, of how we're going to talk about freedom versus strict rules on two sides of this issue in this particular thesis statement. Okay, so all of this to say, this thesis is a poor one because it gets away from the topic. It presents a different topic. It seems, I guess, kind of related to our topic, but it's not very directly responding to the prompt that you're supposed to respond to. Okay, now the last one. A bad thesis only introduces some of the main ideas in the body paragraphs. Okay, so our example here. I believe parents should restrict their children as little as possible. Okay, here we have an incomplete view of what should happen in this essay. Now, if the writer only writes about restricting children, okay, they've failed the essay completely because they have not discussed both sides as they present their opinion. Okay, now if the writer does write about both sides in the body paragraphs, then this thesis statement is simply the problem, that they didn't discuss all of the main ideas that they're going to write about in the essay. They only covered one half of in this case, of the main ideas that they should write about in the body paragraphs of their essay. Okay, so the problem here is that your thesis is too narrowly focused on part of the